Good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, the 19th of January, 2022, and I'm going to be spending the next few minutes giving you an overview of the first month of our solar installation and how much electricity was generated, how much we've saved, etc., etc. If you're looking for a recap on what I have in my system, there is other videos in my channel that you can refer back to. But in short, I have 19 solar panels provided by Trina Solar. I have Enphase microinverters converting all of that energy, and I have a Give Energy inverter and battery storing as much of that energy as I can for use later on in the day. Okay, that's the gist of it. So let's flick to the next page and I can show you all the numbers. So starting at the top left here, this is a chart taken from the portal on my energy provider's website. So we use British Gas at the moment. And the bottom line is, in the month of November, the house consumed 554 kilowatts of energy. The solar system was commissioned on the 9th of November. So I've marked the bar on the chart when it got switched on. It was switched on in the afternoon. And the first thing that happens is the Give Energy battery does a full charge just to calibrate itself. So on that day, we drew an extra 8 kilowatts of power from the grid that the house wouldn't have done otherwise. All right. For the remainder of the month, the system was generating some amount of energy, so you can see what the net amount is that we drew from the grid after whatever energy was generated on those days. Okay, that is the gist of what that chart shows you. Moving across to the chart on the top right, this is a screenshot taken from the Enphase Enlighten system. So this is the kind of analytics portal that Enphase provides you to have a look at the performance of your microinverters and how much generation is going on. So let's work our way through that. So starting with the numbers in the kind of top center of the screen. The bottom line here is our house consumed 474 kilowatts of energy from the days this system was turned on. So from the 9th of November to the end of the month, we consumed 474 kilowatts to power our house. Okay. Now, of that 474, 372 was drawn from the grid, and 106.4 kilowatts was produced by our solar array. There was a tiny amount of export, 4.2 kilowatts, and the reason for that is when the entire system was switched on, the Give Energy battery wasn't working properly for the first 4 or 5 days. Instead of charging up, it was having some sort of issue, and the surplus energy was then being kind of forced to the grid. And then the system kind of realized, hey, no, the battery is not full. We don't want to send this to the grid, and try to kind of charge up the battery. And it was just going back and forward, fighting itself on that. So I contacted Give Energy, and it took them a few days to come up with a firmware update, which resolved the problem. But that's why you see that we were exporting a tiny amount in those first few days before they got it sorted. All right. So if you compare the numbers on the left and the right, the key point here is that British Gas have charged us for 554 kilowatts, which we drew from them in the month of November. But the Enphase system is saying that we only pulled in 372 kilowatts. So the difference here is in those first 8 or 9 days, we apparently drew the other 100 kilowatts. So it seems a bit steep, but if you look at the bar graph from British Gas on the left, the bars were higher in that first week compared to the remainder. And if we didn't have energy from solar, then I would imagine if you extrapolate that roughly 100 kilowatts in the first week, it kind of adds up for an entire month's consumption. So it's about right. So let me explain the bar graph from Enphase, right? So we're looking at the bar graph on the top right chart. So let's talk about the blue bars first of all. The blue bar is the solar power that has been produced by our array on each of those days. So you can see that on the better days, we're producing about 8 kilowatts of power. On the not so sunny days, we're producing a small trickle of like 1 or 2 kilowatts. So ambient light, if your day is overcast, you're basically not going to generate any power. A few watts will get generated, it's like, it will amount to like 1 kilowatt in the entire day. But basically, you need blue sky, pure sunshine, and that's when your system really starts to generate power. Ambient light doesn't seem to do anything at all. It's just kind of noise, I would say. So the blue bar is what was generated by our solar array. The orange bar below the line is what our house consumed. Okay, overall. If we go back to the grey bar above the line, that is what we had to draw from the grid to match our consumption. So on any given day, the blue bar is how much the solar arrays produced, and then the grey stack on top of that is the difference that the system had to pull from the grid to meet the demand that our house was asking for. And as I said earlier on, in the first few days when the system wasn't working properly, we were exporting a bit of energy to the grid. If you look at those first 5 bars, there is a tiny amount on the bottom of that orange bar, which is grey, which is showing what we were exporting back to the grid. All right, so that's the gist of the Enlighten system here. The net of all these numbers is that 22% of the energy that we consumed in the month of November, or since our system was commissioned, was produced by solar. So it's green energy. The remainder was what we drew from the grid and had to pay for. So I'd say for a partial month, 22% is not a bad start. Remember, we're in the middle of winter here at the moment, and my house faces east and west, so my solar panels are not pointing in the most optimal direction. So if you look at the chart now on the bottom half of the screen, this is another screenshot provided by the Enphase system. So this is the layout of my solar panels on the roof. So the top half, which is in a kind of more brighter blue color, these are the panels on the front of my house. So they are facing east, so they catch the sunlight in the mornings. So I've got 8 panels in that kind of layout on the main portion of my roof, and then there's a tiny little segment where I could squeeze in 2 more panels, and you can see the layout there. The numbers inside each of these panels is how much power that particular panel produced across the month of November. So you can see the panels which are slightly higher up, they catch a bit more sunlight and they're able to generate a bit more power. The darker kind of navy blue, almost black coloured panels towards the bottom half of that picture, all generating 2-point-something kilowatts. These are the panels on the rear portion of a house, the west-facing roof. Now, as I said, we're in the middle of the winter, so the sun has got quite a low position in the sky, and as it moves around, by the time it gets to a position on our rear roof to kind of cast some sunshine on these panels, it's pretty much 3 o'clock, and it's so low in the sky that trees and the neighbour's dormer casts a shadow across all of these panels, and so it doesn't really produce anything. So this kind of 2 kilowatts that each of these panels produce in a day is basically kind of the noise, I would describe it. It's what it's managing to do from ambient light. So my advice here is, if you are thinking of getting a solar system installed at your property, you need to put them in a position where they're getting direct sunlight. Solar panels don't appear to do anything useful if they are only catching ambient light, and the payback for your system would basically take forever. Now, in my case, these rear panels are not doing anything useful, but we're in the winter months. As we start to pull into the summer and the sun's got a higher position in the sky, I am fully expecting these panels to jump into life and really, really make a difference. Before we decided to get the solar installed, I did check how much of our roof was catching sunlight in those summer months, and I definitely expect the left-hand 6 panels to produce a good amount. The ones on the right-hand side get a shadow from our neighbour's dormers, so they might not be producing too much. All right, now the key point from all of this is how much money did we save? So the bottom line is the property produced 106.4 kilowatts from solar, which we would otherwise have pulled from the grid. So our unit rate from British Gas at the moment is 20.871 pence, or 0.20871 pounds. So if I multiply 106.4 kilowatts by 20.871 pence, it takes me to a total of 22.21 pounds saved. Okay. At the moment, we haven't got our documentation through to activate the smart export guarantee. So from those 4 kilowatts that we pushed back to the grid, I haven't earned anything. And either way, this is going to be a trivial number because the amount that you earn back from exporting is so small. It's, you'd have to have a mega array to make it worthwhile. But that is basically the summary of November's performance. So the key point here is that it's a partial month. It's the first month with our system on, and November we had quite a few days of good sunshine. So I'd say for a winter month it was a decent month. So let's see what the next video holds for the update on December.